Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to part 7 of the Law of One with raw material. So in this next segment, we actually are going to start talking about what the Law of One is and really getting down to the nuts and bolts of the concept and how it works. And basically we're gonna start at the very beginning. Like what? Basically, they want to start like what happened before the Big Bang almost, like what was where did it all start? Because that's very important when we're talking about the law of one. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself with these sessions because it goes very extensive into even book 2 and 3. And we're just in the middle of book 1 right now. So, but basically, where everything started, where the law of one started, was basically a thought. Now, this was before vibration, before light, before everything. The very first thing that ever was existing was a thought. And then came consciousness. And then came awareness of being conscious. And this is all before anything is even vibrating or materialized. This is where it all began. And everything comes from those first act of consciousness. So that's what we're going to get into in this next segment. And I will make some comments at the end of this segment. So here is part 7 with the raw material.
Session 12. January 28, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the loving the light of the infinite creator. I communicate now. Questioner, in the last session you mentioned that the Orion Crusaders came here in chariots. Could you describe the chariots? Ra, I am Ra. The term chariot is a term used in warfare among your peoples. That is its significance. The shape of the Orion craft is one of the following. Firstly, the elongated, ovoid shape, which is of a darker nature than silver but which has a metallic appearance if seen in the light. In the absence of light, it appears to be red or fiery in some manner. Other craft include disc-shaped objects of a small nature approximately 12 feet in your measurement in diameter, the box-like shape approximately 40 feet to a side in your measurement. Other craft can take on a desired shape through the use of thought control mechanisms. There are various civilization complexes which work within this group. Some are more able to use intelligent infinity than others. The information is very seldom shared, therefore, the chariots vary greatly in shape and appearance. Questioner, is there any effort on the part of the Confederation to stop the Orion chariots from arriving here? Ra, I am Ra. Every effort is made to quarantine this planet. However, the network of guardians, much like any other pattern of patrols on whatever level, does not hinder each and every entity from penetrating quarantine. For if request is made in light love, the law of one will be met with acquiescence. If the request is not made, due to the slipping through the net, then there is penetration of this net. Questioner, who makes this request? Ra, I am Ra. Your query is unclear. Please restate. Questioner, I don't understand how the Confederation stops the Orion chariots from coming through the quarantine? Ra, I am Ra. There is contact at the level of light form or light body being depending upon the vibratory level of the guardian. These guardians sweep reaches of your Earth's energy fields to be aware of any entities approaching. An entity which is approaching is hailed in the name of the One Creator. Any entity thus hailed is bathed in love light and will of free will obey the quarantine due to the power of the law of one. Questioner, what would happen to the entity if he did not obey the quarantine after being hailed? Ra, I am Ra. To not obey quarantine after being hailed on the level of which we speak would be equivalent to your not stopping upon walking into a solid brick wall. Questioner, what would happen to the entity if he did this? What would happen to his chariot? Ra, I am Ra. The Creator is one being. The vibratory level of those able to breach the quarantine boundaries is such that upon seeing the love light net it is impossible to break this law. Therefore, nothing happens. No attempt is made. There is no confrontation. The only beings who are able to penetrate the quarantine are those who discover windows or distortions in the space-time continua surrounding your planet's energy fields. Through these windows they come. These windows are rare and unpredictable. Questioner, Does this account for what we call UFO flaps where a large number of UFOs show up like in 1973? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, are most of the UFOs which are seen in our skies from the Orion group? Ra, I am Ra. Many of those seen in your skies are the Orion group. They send out messages. Some are received by those who are oriented toward service to others. These messages then are altered to be acceptable to those entities while warning of difficulties ahead. This is the most that self-serving entities can do when faced with those whose wish is to serve others. The contacts which the group finds most helpful to their cause are those contacts made with entities whose orientation is towards service to self. There are many thought form entities in your skies which are of a positive nature and are the projections of the Confederation. Questioner, you mentioned that the Orion Crusaders, when they get through the net, give both technical and non-technical information. I think I know what you mean by technical information, but what type of non-technical information do they give? And am I right in assuming that this is done by telepathic contact? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Through telepathy, the philosophy of the law of one with a distortion of service to self is promulgated. In advanced groups there are rituals and exercises given, and these have been written down just as the service to others-oriented entities have written down the promulgated philosophy of their teachers. The philosophy concerns the service of manipulating others that they may experience service towards the other self, thus through this experience becoming able to appreciate service to self. These entities would become oriented towards service to self and in turn manipulate yet others so that they in turn might experience the service towards the other self. Questioner, would this be the origin of what we call black magic? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct in one sense, incorrect in another. The Orion group has aided the so-called negatively oriented among your mind-body-spirit complexes. These same entities would be concerning themselves with service to self in any case, and there are many upon your so-called inner planes which are negatively oriented and thus available as inner teachers or guides and so-called possessors of certain souls who seek this distortion of service to self. Questioner, is it possible for an entity here on Earth to be so confused as to call both the Confederation and the Orion group in an alternating way, first one, then the other, and then back to the first again? Ra, I am Ra. It is entirely possible for the untuned channel, as you call that service, to receive both positive and negative communications. If the entity at the base of its confusion is oriented toward service to others, the entity will begin to receive messages of doom. If the entity at the base of the complex of beingness is oriented toward service to self, the Crusaders, who in this case, do not find it necessary to lie, will simply begin to give the philosophy they are here to give. Many of your so-called contacts among your people have been confused and self-destructive because the channels were oriented towards service to others but, in the desire for proof, were open to the lying information of the Crusaders, who then were able to neutralize the effectiveness of the channel. Questioner, are most of these Crusaders fourth density? Ra, I am Ra. There is a majority of fourth density. That is correct. Questioner, is an entity in the fourth density normally invisible to us? Ra, I am Ra. The use of the word normal is one which befuddles the meaning of the question. Let us rephrase for clarity. The fourth density is, by choice, not visible to third density. It is possible for fourth density to be visible. However, it is not the choice of the fourth density entity to be visible due to the necessity for concentration upon a rather difficult vibrational complex which is the third density you experience. Questioner, are there any Confederation or Orion entities living upon the Earth and operating visibly among us in our society at this time? Ra, I am Ra. There are no entities of either group walking among you at this time. However, the Crusaders of Orion use two types of entities to do their bidding, shall we say. The first type is the thought form, the second, a kind of robot. Questioner, could you describe the robot? Ra, I am Ra. The robot may look like any other being. It is a construct. Questioner, is the robot what is normally called the Men in Black? Ra, I am Ra. This is incorrect. Questioner, who are the Men in Black? Ra, I am Ra. The Men in Black are a thought form type of entity which have some beingness to their makeup. They have certain physical characteristics given them. However, their true vibrational nature is without third density vibrational characteristics and, therefore, they are able to materialize and dematerialize when necessary. Questioner, are all of these Men in Black then used by the Orion Crusaders? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, you spoke of wanderers. Who are wanderers? Where do they come from? Ra, I am Ra. Imagine, if you will, the sands of your shores. As countless as the grains of sand are the sources of intelligent infinity. When a social memory complex has achieved its complete understanding of its desire, it may conclude that its desire is service to others with the distortion towards reaching their hand, figuratively, to any entities who call for aid. These entities, whom you may call the brothers and sisters of sorrow, move toward this calling of sorrow. These entities are from all reaches of the infinite creation and are bound together by the desire to serve in this distortion. Questioner: how many of them are incarnate on earth now? Ra: I am Ra. The number is approximate due to an heavy influx of those birthed at this time due to an intensive need to lighten the planetary vibration and thus aid in harvest. The number approaches 65 million. Questioner: are most of these from the fourth density? Or what density do they come from? Ra: I am Ra. Few there are of fourth density. The largest number of wanderers, as you call them, are of the sixth density. The desire to serve must be distorted towards a great deal of purity of mind and what you may call foolhardiness or bravery, depending upon your distortion complex judgment. The challenge danger of the wanderer is that it will forget its mission, become karmically involved, and thus be swept into the maelstrom of which it had incarnated to avert the destruction. Questioner: what could one of these entities do to become karmically involved? Could you give an example of that? Ra: I am Ra. An entity which acts in a consciously unloving manner in action with other beings can become karmically involved. Questioner: do many of these wanderers have physical ailments in this third density situation? Ra: I am Ra. Due to the extreme variance between the vibratory distortions of third density and those of the more dense densities, if you will, wanderers have as a general rule some form of handicap, difficulty, or feeling of alienation which is severe. The most common of these difficulties are alienation, the reaction against the planetary vibration by personality disorders, as you would call them, and body complex ailments indicating difficulty in adjustment to the planetary vibrations such as allergies, as you would call them. Questioner: thank you. Is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable? Ra: I am Ra. We ask you to realign the object upon which the symbols sit. It is not a significant distortion for only one session, but you will find upon measuring the entire assemblage that the resting place is 1.4 degrees from the correct alignment, the resting place an additional 5 degrees away from proper orientation. Do not concern yourselves with this in the space-time nexus present, but do not allow these distortions to remain over a long period or the contact will be gradually impaired. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adonai. Session 13. January 29, 1981. Ra: I am Ra. I greet you in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. I communicate now. Questioner: first of all, I would like to apologize for asking so many stupid questions while searching for what we should do. I consider what we are doing to be a great honor and privilege to also be humble messengers of the Law of One. I now believe that the way to prepare this book is to start at the beginning of creation and follow through the evolution of man on Earth, investigating at all times how the Law of One was used. I would also like to make as the title of the book, The Law of One, and I would like to state as the author, Ra. Would you agree to this? Ra: I am Ra. Your query is unclear. Would you please state as separate queries each area of agreement? Questioner: first, I would like to start at the beginning of creation, as far back as we can go and follow the development of man to the present time. Is this agreeable? Ra: I am Ra. This is completely your discernment understanding decision. Questioner: secondly, I would like to title the book, The Law of One, by Ra. Is this agreeable? Ra: I am Ra. The title of the book is acceptable. The authorship by vibratory sound complex Ra is, in our distortion of understanding, incomplete. We are messengers. Questioner: can you state who then should author the book? Ra: I am Ra. I can only request that if your discernment understanding suggests the use of this vibratory sound complex, Ra, the phrase in humble messenger of the Law of One be appended. Questioner: thank you. Can you tell me of the first known thing in the creation? Ra: I am Ra. The first known thing in the creation is infinity. The infinity is creation. Questioner: from this infinity then must come what we experience as creation. What was the next step or the next evolvement? Ra: I am Ra. Infinity became aware. This was the next step. Questioner: after this, what came next? Ra: I am Ra. Awareness led to the focus of infinity into infinite energy. You have called this by various vibrational sound complexes, the most common to your ears being logos or love. The Creator is the focusing of infinity as an aware or conscious principle called by us as closely as we can create understanding learning in your language, intelligent infinity. Questioner, can you state the next step? Ra, I am Ra. The next step is still at this space-time nexus in your illusion achieving its progression as you may see it in your illusion. The next step is an infinite reaction to the creative principle following the law of one in one of its primal distortions, freedom of will. Thus many dimensions, infinite in number, are possible. The energy moves from the intelligent infinity due first to the outpouring of randomized creative force, this then creating patterns which in holographic style appear as the entire creation no matter which direction or energy is explored. These patterns of energy begin then to regularize their own local, shall we say, rhythms and fields of energy, thus creating dimensions and universes. Questioner, then can you tell me how the galaxy and planetary systems were formed? Ra, I am Ra. You must imagine a great leap of thought in this query, for at the last query the physical, as you call it, universes were not yet born. The energies moved in increasingly intelligent patterns until the individualization of various energies emanating from the creative principle of intelligent infinity became such as to be co-creators. Thus the so-called physical matter began. The concept of light is instrumental in grasping this great leap of thought as this vibrational distortion of infinity is the building block of that which is known as matter, the light being intelligent and full of energy. Thus being the first distortion of intelligent infinity which was called by the creative principle. This light of love was made to have in its occurrences of being certain characteristics, among them the infinite whole paradoxically described by the straight line, as you would call it. This paradox is responsible for the shape of the various physical illusion entities you call solar systems, galaxies, and planets of revolving and tending towards the lenticular. Questioner, I think I made an error in getting ahead of the process you were describing. Would it be helpful to fill in that great leap due to the mistake I made? Ra, I am Ra. I attempted to bridge the gap. However, you may question me in any manner you deem appropriate. Questioner, taking the question just before the one I asked about the galaxies and planets and tell me what the next step was from there? Ra, I am Ra. The steps, as you call them, are, at the point of question, simultaneous and infinite. Questioner, can you tell me how intelligent infinity became, shall we say? I'm having difficulty with the language, how intelligent infinity became individualized from itself. Ra, I am Ra. This is an appropriate question. The intelligent infinity discerned a concept. This concept was discerned to be freedom of will of awareness. This concept was finity. This was the first and primal paradox or distortion of the law of one. Thus the one intelligent infinity invested itself in an exploration of manyness. Due to the infinite possibilities of intelligent infinity there is no ending to manyness. The exploration, thus, is free to continue infinitely in an eternal present. Questioner, was the galaxy that we are in created by the infinite intelligence or was it created by a portion of the infinite intelligence? Ra, I am Ra. The galaxy and all other things of material of which you are aware are products of individualized portions of intelligent infinity. As each exploration began, it, in turn, found its focus and became co-creator. Using intelligent infinity each portion created an universe and allowing the rhythms of free choice to flow, playing with the infinite spectrum of possibilities. Each individualized portion channeled the love light into what you might call intelligent energy, thus creating the so-called natural laws of any particular universe. Each universe, in turn, individualized to a focus becoming, in turn, co-creator and allowing further diversity. Thus creating further intelligent energies regularizing or causing natural laws to appear in the vibrational patterns of what you would call a solar system. Thus, each solar system has its own, shall we say, local coordinate system of illusory natural laws. It shall be understood that any portion, no matter how small, of any density or illusory pattern contains, as in an holographic picture, the one creator which is infinity. Thus all begins and ends in mystery. Questioner, can you tell me how the individualized infinity created our galaxy and if the same portion created our planetary system and, if so, how this came about? Ra, I am Ra. We may have misperceived your query. We were under the distortion impression that we had responded to this particular query. Would you restate the query? Questioner, I am wondering if the planetary system that we are in now was all created at once or if our sun was created first and the planets later? Ra, I am Ra. The process is from the larger, in your illusion, to the smaller. Thus the co-creator, individualizing the galaxy, created energy patterns which then focused in multitudinous focuses of further conscious awareness of intelligent infinity. Thus, the solar system of which you experience inhabitation is of its own patterns, rhythms, and so-called natural laws which are unique to itself. However, the progression is from the galaxy spiraling energy to the solar spiraling energy, to the planetary spiraling energy, to the experiential circumstances of spiraling energy which begin the first density of awareness of consciousness of planetary entities. Questioner, could you tell me about this first density of planetary entities? Ra, I am Ra. Each step recapitulates intelligent infinity in its discovery of awareness. In a planetary environment, all begins in what you would call chaos, energy undirected and random in its infinity. Slowly, in your terms of understanding, there forms a focus of self-awareness. Thus the logos moves. Light comes to form the darkness, according to the co-creator's patterns and vibratory rhythms, so constructing a certain type of experience. This begins with first density, which is the density of consciousness, the mineral and water life upon the planet learning from fire and wine the awareness of being. This is the first density. Questioner, how does this first density then progress to greater awareness? Ra, I am Ra. The spiraling energy, which is the characteristic of what you call light, moves in a straight line spiral, thus giving spirals an inevitable vector upwards to a more comprehensive beingness with regards to intelligent infinity. Thus, first-dimensional beingness strives towards the second density lessons of a type of awareness which includes growth rather than dissolution or random change. Questioner, could you define what you mean by growth? Ra, I am Ra. Picture, if you will, the difference between first vibrational mineral or water life and the lower second density beings which begin to move about within and upon its being. This movement is the characteristic of second density, the striving towards light and growth. Questioner, by striving towards light, what do you mean? Ra, I am Ra. A very simplistic example of second density growth striving towards light is that of the leaf striving towards the source of light. Questioner, is there any physical difference between first and second density? For instance, if I could see both a first and second density planet side by side, in my present condition, could I see both of them? Would they both be physical to me? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. All of the octave of your densities would be clearly visible were not the fourth through the seventh freely choosing not to be visible. Questioner, then how does the second density progress to the third? Ra, I am Ra. The second density strives towards the third density, which is the density of self-consciousness or self-awareness. The striving takes place through the higher second density forms who are invested by third density beings with an identity to the extent that they become self-aware mind-body complexes. Thus becoming mind-body-spirit complexes and entering third density, the first density of consciousness of spirit. Questioner, what is the density level of our planet Earth at this time? Ra, I am Ra. The sphere upon which you dwell is third density in its beingness of mind-body-spirit complexes. It is now in a space-time continuum, fourth density. This is causing a somewhat difficult harvest. Questioner, how does a third density planet become a fourth density planet? Ra, I am Ra. This will be the last full question. The fourth density is, as we have said, as regularized in its approach as the striking of a clock upon the hour. The space-time of your solar system has enabled this planetary sphere to spiral into space-time of a different vibrational configuration. This causes the planetary sphere to be able to be molded by these new distortions. However, the thought forms of your people during this transition period are such that the mind-body-spirit complexes of both individual and societies are scattered throughout the spectrum instead of becoming able to grasp the needle, shall we say, and point the compass in one direction. Thus, the entry into the vibration of love, sometimes called by your people the vibration of understanding, is not effective with your present societal complex. Thus, the harvest shall be such that many will repeat the third density cycle. The energies of your wanderers, your teachers, and your adepts at this time are all bent upon increasing the harvest. However, there are few to harvest. Questioner, I would like to apologize for sometimes asking inappropriate questions. It's difficult sometimes to ask precisely the right question. I don't wish to go over any ground that we've already covered. I notice that this period is slightly shorter than previous work sessions. Is there a reason for this? Ra, I am Ra. This instrument's vital energy is somewhat low. Questioner, I am assuming from this that it would be a good idea not to have another session today. Is that correct? Ra, I am Ra. It is well to have a session later if it is acceptable that we monitor this instrument and cease using it when it becomes low in the material which we take from it. We do not wish to deplete this instrument. Questioner, this is always acceptable in any session. I will ask my final question. Is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or aid in this communication? Ra, I am Ra. It is well. Each is most conscientious. Continue in the same. I am Ra. I leave you in the loving the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adonai. Session 14. January 29, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the loving the light of the infinite Creator. We communicate now. Questioner, after going over this morning's work, I thought it might be helpful to fill in a few things. You said that the second density strives towards the third density, which is the density of self-consciousness, or self-awareness. The striving takes place through higher second density forms being invested by third density beings. Could you explain what you mean by this? Ra, I am Ra. Much as you would put on a vestment, so do your third density beings invest or clothe some second density beings with self-awareness. This is often done through the opportunity of what you call pets. It has also been done by various other means of investiture. These include many so-called religious practice complexes which personify and send love to various natural second density beings in their group form. Questioner, when this earth was second density, how did the second density beings on it become so invested? Ra, I am Ra. There was not this type of investment as spoken but the simple third density investment, which is the line of spiraling light calling distortion upward from density to density. The process takes longer when there is no investment made by incarnate third density beings. Questioner, then what was the second density form? What did it look like, that became Earthman in the third density? What did he look like in the second density? Ra, I am Ra. The difference between second and third density bodily forms would in many cases have been more like one to the other. In the case of your planetary sphere, the process was interrupted by those who incarnated here from the planetary sphere you call Mars. They were adjusted by genetic changing and, therefore, there was some difference which was of a very noticeable variety rather than the gradual raising of the bipedal forms upon your second density level to third density level. This has nothing to do with the so-called placement of the soul. This has only to do with the circumstances of the influx of those from that culture. Questioner, I understand from previous material that this occurred 75,000 years ago. It was then that our third density process of evolution began. Can you tell me the history, hitting only the points of development, shall I say, that occurred within this 75,000 years, any point when contact was made to aid this development? Ra, I am Ra. The first attempt to aid your peoples was at the time 75,000. This attempt 75,000 of your years ago has been previously described by us. The next attempt was approximately 58,000 of your years ago, continuing for a long period in your measurement, with those of mu as you call this race or mind-body-spirit social complex. The next attempt was long in coming and occurred approximately 13,000 of your years ago when some intelligent information was offered to those of Atlantis. This being of the same type of healing and crystal working of which we have spoken previously. The next attempt was 11,000 of your years ago. These are approximations as we are not totally able to process your space-time continuum measurement system. This was in what you call Egypt, and of this we have also spoken. The same beings who came with us returned approximately 3,500 years later in order to attempt to aid the South American mind-body-spirit social complex once again. However, the pyramids of those so-called cities were not to be used in the appropriate fashion. Therefore, this was not pursued further. There was a landing approximately 3,000 of your years ago also in your South America, as you call it. There were a few attempts to aid your peoples approximately 2,300 years ago, this in the area of Egypt. The remaining part of the cycle, we have never been gone from your fifth dimension and have been working in this last minor cycle to prepare for harvest. Questioner, was the Egyptian visit of 11,000 years ago the only one where you actually walked the earth? Ra, I am Ra. I understand your question distorted in the direction of selves rather than other selves. We of the vibratory sound complex, Ra, have walked among you only at that time. Questioner, I understood you to say in an earlier session that pyramids were built during the earth. How many pyramids were built? Ra, I am Ra. There are 6 balancing pyramids and 52 others built for additional healing and initiatory work among your mind-body-spirit social complexes. Questioner, what is a balancing pyramid? Ra, I am Ra. Imagine, if you will, the many force fields of the Earth in their geometrically precise web. Energies stream into the Earth planes, as you would call them, from magnetically determined points. Due to growing, thought-formed distortions in understanding of the law of one, the planet itself was seen to have the potential for imbalance. The balancing pyramidal structures were charged with crystals which drew the appropriate balance from the energy forces streaming into the various geometrical centers of electromagnetic energy which surround and shape the planetary sphere. Questioner, let me make a synopsis and you tell me if I am correct. All of these visits for the last 75,000 years were for the purpose of giving to the people of Earth an understanding of the law of one, and in this way allowing them to progress upward through the fourth, fifth, and sixth densities. This was to be a service to Earth. The pyramids were used also in giving the law of one in their own way. The balancing pyramids, I'm not quite sure of. Am I right so far? Ra, I am Ra. You are correct to the limits of the precision allowed by language. Questioner, did the balancing pyramid prevent the Earth from changing its axis? Ra, I am Ra. This query is not clear. Please restate. Questioner, does the balancing refer to the individual who is initiated in the pyramid or does it refer to the physical balancing of the Earth on its axis in space? Ra, I am Ra. The balancing pyramidal structures could be and were used for individual initiation. However, the use of these pyramids was also designed for the balancing of the planetary energy web. The other pyramids are not placed correctly for Earth healing but for healing of mind-body-spirit complexes. It came to our attention that your density was distorted towards what is called by our distortion understanding of third density on your planetary sphere. More of a time-space continuum and one incarnation pattern in order to have a fuller opportunity to learn teach the laws or ways of the primal distortion of the law of one which is love. Questioner, I want to make this statement and you tell me if I am correct. The balancing pyramids were to do what we call increase the lifespan of entities here so that they would gain more wisdom of the law of one while they were in the physical at one time. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. However, the pyramids not called by us by the vibrational sound complex, balancing pyramids, were more numerous and were used exclusively for the above purpose and the teach learning of healers to charge and enable these processes. Questioner, George Van Tassel built a machine in our western desert called an Integratron. Will this machine work for that purpose, of increasing the lifespan? Ra, I am Ra. The machine is incomplete and will not function for the above-mentioned purpose. Questioner, who gave George the information on how to build it? Ra, I am Ra. There were two contacts which gave the entity with the vibratory sound complex, George, this information. One was of the Confederation. The second was of the Orion group. The Confederation was caused to find the distortion towards non-contact due to the alteration of the vibrational mind complex patterns of the one called George. Thus, the Orion group used this instrument. However, this instrument, though confused, was a mind-body-spirit complex devoted at the heart to service to others, so the, shall we say, worst that could be done was to discredit this source. Questioner, would there be any value to the people of this planet now to complete this machine? Ra, I am Ra. The harvest is now. There is not at this time any reason to include efforts along these distortions toward longevity, but rather to encourage distortions toward seeking the heart of self. For this which resides clearly in the violet ray energy field will determine the harvesting of each mind-body-spirit complex. Questioner, going back to when we started this 75,000-year period, there was a harvest 25,000 years after the start which would make it 50,000 years ago. Can you tell me how many were harvested at that time? Ra, I am Ra. The harvest was none. Questioner, there was no harvest? What about 25,000 years ago? Ra, I am Ra. A harvesting began taking place in the latter portion, as you measure time-space, of the second cycle, with individuals finding the gateway to intelligent infinity. The harvest at that time, though extremely small, was those entities of extreme distortion towards service to the entities who were now to repeat the major cycle. These entities, therefore, remained in third density although they could, at any moment present nexus, leave this density through use of intelligent infinity. Questioner, Tihen in the harvest 25,000 years ago, the entities who could have been harvested into the fourth density chose to remain here in service to this planetary population. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Thus, there was no harvest, but there were harvestable entities who shall choose the manner of their entrance into fourth dimension. Questioner, Then for the last 2,300 years you have been working to create as large a harvest as possible at the end of the total 75,000-year cycle. Can you state with respect to the Law of One why you do this? Ra, I am Ra. I speak for the social memory complex termed Ra. We came among you to aid you. Our efforts in service were perverted. Our desire then is to eliminate as far as possible the distortions caused by those misreading our information and guidance. The general cause of service such as the Confederation offers is that of the primal distortion of the Law of One, which is service. The one being of the creation is like unto a body, if you will accept this third density analogy. Would we ignore a pain in the leg? A bruise upon the skin? A cut which is festering? No. There is no ignoring a call. We, the entities of sorrow, chose as our service the attempt to heal the sorrow which we are calling analogous to the pains of a physical body complex distortion. Questioner, of what density level is Ra? Ra, I am Ra. I am 6th density with a strong seeking towards 7th density. The harvest for us will be in only approximately 2.5 million of your years, and it is our desire to be ready for harvest as it approaches in our space-time continuum. Questioner, and you ready yourselves for this harvest through the service you can provide. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. We offer the Law of One, the solving of paradoxes, the balancing of love light and light love. Questioner, how long is one of your cycles? Ra, I am Ra. One of our cycles computes to 75 million of your years. Questioner, 75 million years? Ra, I am Ra. That is correct. Questioner, in your service in giving the Law of One, do you work with any other planets than Earth at this time, or just Earth? Ra, I am Ra. We work only with this planetary sphere at this time. Questioner, you stated that you were called by 352,000 Earth entities. Does this mean that it is this number that will understand and accept the Law of One? Ra, I am Ra. We cannot estimate the correctness of your statement, for those who call are not in every case able to understand the answer to their calling. Moreover, those who were not calling previously may, with great trauma, discover the answers to the call nearly simultaneously with their late call. There is no time-space in call. Therefore, we cannot estimate the number of your mind-body-spirit complexes which will, in your space-time continuum distortion, hear and understand. Questioner, how do you normally perform your service of giving the Law of One? How have you done this over the last 2,300 years? How have you normally given this to Earth people? Ra, I am Ra. We have used channels such as this one, but in most cases the channels feel inspired by dreams and visions without being aware, consciously, of our identity or existence. This particular group has been accentuatedly trained to recognize such contact. This makes this group able to be aware of a focal or vibrational source of information. Questioner, when you contact the entities in their dreams and otherwise, these entities first have to be seeking in the direction of the Law of One. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. For example, the entities of the nation Egypt were in a state of pantheism, as you may call the distortion towards separate worship of various portions of the Creator. We were able to contact one whose orientation was toward the One. Questioner, I assume that as the cycle ends and inconveniences occur, there will be some entities who start seeking or be catalyzed into seeking because of the trauma and will then hear your words telepathically or in written form such as this book. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. You are correct except in understanding that the inconveniences have begun. Questioner, can you tell me who is responsible for transmitting the book Kawasp? Ra, I am Ra. This was transmitted by one of Confederation's social memory complex status whose idea, as offered to the Council, was to use some of the known physical history of the so-called religions or religious distortions of your cycle in order to veil and partially unveil aspects or primal distortions of the Law of One. All names can be taken to be created for their vibrational characteristics. The information buried within has to do with a deeper understanding of love and light, and the attempts of infinite intelligence through many messengers to learn those entities of your sphere. Questioner, have there been any other books that you can name that are available for this purpose that have been given by the Confederation? Ra, I am Ra. We cannot share this information, for it would distort your discernment patterns in your future. You may ask about a particular volume. Questioner, who transmitted the Urantia book? Ra, I am Ra. This was given by a series of discarnate entities of your own earth planes, the so-called inner planes. This material is not passed by the Council. Questioner, who spoke through Edgar Casey? Ra, I am Ra. No entity spoke through Edgar Casey. Questioner, Where did the information come from that Edgar Casey channeled? Ra, I am Ra. We have explained before that the intelligent infinity is brought into intelligent energy from 8th density or octave. The one-sound vibratory complex called Edgar used this gateway to view the present, which is not the continuum you experience but the potential social memory complex of this planetary sphere. The term your peoples have used for this is the Akashic Record or the Hall of Records. This is the last question which you may now ask. Questioner, is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to help during the transmission? Ra, I am Ra. We only reiterate the importance of alignment. This instrument is placed 2 degrees away from the direction of the resting place, which is correct. This may be eyed, shall we say, by sight, and the instrument reminded. You are being conscientious. Is there any brief question we may answer before this session is closed? Questioner, can you tell me if we are accomplishing our effort reasonably well? Ra, I am Ra. The law is one. There are no mistakes. I am Ra. I leave this instrument in the loving the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one Creator. Adonai.
Okay, that is a great place to stop. Now, I really want to talk about the Akashic Records or the Hall of Records, or, the collective consciousness is what, they're talking about here in this last session that they just had. And I have a really good understanding about what the Akashic Records are. So I'm going to film a whole separate video explaining them, because I think it's really monumentally important to understand what these records are, and I don't think they get in depth enough during the sessions with Ra, because this is where Ra is getting his information from, is the Akashic Records for the most part. So I really want to do a whole separate video explaining what they are, how they work, and how you can get downloads from them. So I will put that up on my channel as a whole separate video. So I will see you guys in session 8.